Well, I think this could be really seriously good news because the North Koreans have signalled their intention to sit down and have talks, not just with South Korea, that's due to happen at some point next month, but potentially to sit down and negotiate with the Americans. Now, if you think about it, this is a very long way away from the speeches Donald Trump was giving just a few months ago about how he saw North Korea.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you.
Wow. Well, when he said that, the whole world said the president is making a terrible mistake. He'll lead us to World War III. He's a madman. He then went on to address the United Nations General Assembly on this subject.
Now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary.
Well, he couldn't really have been clearer, could he? Rocket Man is on a suicide mission, and if they go on developing nuclear capabilities and testing their weapons, and in particular firing them, of course, as they did twice over Japanese airspace, they will be destroyed. And as I say, most commentators thought this was mad, bad and dangerous, as if maybe it was better to do it the way Obama did it. Totally ignore the problem and brush it under the carpet. But just look at what this has yielded. You know, he said one day, my button is bigger than Kim Jong-un's, which of course everyone took the mickey out of. But just see where this has led. And there's now talks about frank discussions being held between North Korea and the United States of America, Trump himself tweeting that possible progress was now being made. And I think this is one of the best news stories we've heard for weeks, months, maybe even years. And I put it to you that this shows just how successful Donald Trump's foreign policy has been. It's a remarkable diplomatic success for a man who many would not use the word diplomatic about. So tell me what you think. Do you agree with me that actually standing up, threatening North Korea, getting a coalition together to put on really, really tough sanctions, do you agree with me this is now bearing some fruit and it's good news? And if you do, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, no, actually, Trump still is dangerous. You should not, as a world leader, use that kind of language, in which case text to 848. Or maybe you think, hey, slow down a bit, Nigel. There's nothing yet to get too excited about. In which case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook. We're live here in the London studios. And I get already on text, Nigel, Ukraine gave up her nuclear weapons in exchange for a protection pact with the US, the UK and Russia. How did that work out, says Steve? Well, not great, Steve, but I think we're there into a slightly separate debate. And I would say that actually a massive error was made, sending out a signal that the European Union and NATO wanted to expand into Ukraine, which Russia saw as a threat. But you know something? If we go back, Steve, and we think about détente, and we think about what happened, back in the 1980s between the Soviet Union and the Americans, and ultimately the end of the Cold War, I think you could argue that there's a precedent for this. That Reagan was not prepared to back down on Star Wars or any new technology. And in the end, that sheer financial and military muscle that America had led directly to the end of the Cold War. It was strong American statesmanship that did it, not weak leadership. And I think Trump, in many ways, is doing the same thing, albeit, his style and Reagan's style are pretty different. And, I'm a supporter of the president. I couldn't disagree that, a lot of these phrases are really tough. They're the kind of language we've never heard from a Western world leader before, but I think they've been very effective. Started off, of course, didn't it, with the ice hockey team, the women from North and South Korea playing together in the Winter Olympics. Now there'll be meetings taking place between North and South Korea in April, and possibly a sit-down with the American administration. And if that happens, then Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man himself, has expressed a willingness to discuss nuclear disarmament and to impose a moratorium on nuclear and missile tests during those talks. Surely, folks, that is good news. Even those of you that are not Trump fans, don't you agree with me? This is real progress. Graham is calling from Hay-on-Wye. Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Nigel. It's good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you. So, is it a big diplomatic coup?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. This has been a great success for Trump. People were decrying him. People were up in arms every time he spoke bellicosely, in grand terms. But he was basically talking the language of Kim Jong-un. And the main thing, the thing above all, he showed himself to be unpredictable. And I think that put the wind up Kim Jong-un. He didn't know who he was dealing with anymore.
Yes.
Whereas in the past, Obama, he could just brush away. Obama with his red line in the sand that was ignored and stuff like that, and the Clintons and the Bushes and what have you. But with Trump, he did not know what he was up against. Trump behaved as aggressively as he was doing. He came back every time Kim Jong-un said something. He came back with as much. And, the West, the liberal left and everything were all up in arms about this terrible warmongering talk, but it has clearly worked.
Yes, I mean, it's sort of also partially a case, isn't it, of standing up to a bully, Graham?
Exactly. Bullies don't like being bullied back.
Yeah. And Trump is...
Nothing but a piece, hoping they will suddenly see sense and be nice. They don't.
Trump is pretty good at punching back, isn't he?
Exactly.
In fact,
that's what was needed, and I was so thrilled. First good sign was about the games, the Winter Games.
Yep.
That's a sign of things starting to thaw. And then we got the news about talks. I thought, here we are, he's cracked it.
Do you know, Graham, your point about the unpredictability of Trump on the world stage is a point that many American commentators have made to me, and it's got everybody on the edges of their seats and thinking. Graham, I thank you very much indeed for your call. I go to Grace next in Ealing. Good evening, Grace.
Hi.
So, has Trump pulled off a bit of a coup?
I think it's hard to say. I as a 25-year-old, know far too little about world politics and things like that. So it would seem that you make a good point that it was to some extent successful in holding back Kim Jong-un or getting Kim Jong-un to slow down a bit or be willing to negotiate. However, we should keep in mind that what Donald Trump says doesn't just have an effect on other world leaders. He's being heard by literally billions of people all over the planet. And is it not the people who hear him in countries all over the place who think America is cruel, America is vile, we want to go and commit terrorist attacks against this nasty country? I worry that...
Well, Grace, I think there is an argument, and certainly it's one that Jeremy Corbyn pushes very, very hard, that says that American intervention in Iraq, Afghanistan and elsewhere has directly led to an increased hatred of the West and a growth of terrorism. So, Grace, there is an argument that many hold that says that when America intervenes militarily, perhaps we make the problem worse, not better. So I do get that. But in this case, Grace, this is slightly different, isn't it? I mean, this is, in the case of North Korea, this is a state that is terrifying people like the Japanese. And isn't it, in a sense, what Trump is doing, not just for America, but actually for the world?
I really I can't say for certain because I don't know enough about the ins and outs and what the future holds. None of us know what's going to happen in the next few years in this regard. I just can imagine that there'll be some jihadi teachers somewhere who will use statements like the ones Trump did to encourage his students to see the West as an enemy.
Well, Grace, that may very well be true, but I would say this to you. You know, famous quote of Churchill's, there are many, of course, but famous quote of Churchill's that jaw is better than war. And isn't the fact that the North Koreans and the response from the president, that they are now talking about sitting down and having a conversation, isn't that at least a bit of good news?
Yes, it absolutely is, and I really hope and pray that things continue to improve.
So do I. Grace, I thank you for your call. And I get on text, anonymously sadly, you are Trump's PR man in London. He still looks like a fool, sounds like a fool, and talks like a fool. Do you know what? Even if you're right on all three things, if he's managed to get the North Koreans to the negotiating table, he's done more for world peace than Obama or Bush or anyone that went before him. That's my view, but you can tell me I'm completely wrong. You can tell me I'm the fool, if you want to, by calling 0345 6060 973. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:15. On Twitter, I see a Nobel Peace Prize on the cards for Trump. Well, John, thanks for the tweet. I don't think the international community will ever award Trump a prize for anything because they don't think he's very couth. They don't think he's very diplomatic. But you know what? If he gets the North Koreans round that table, they start having these conversations and there is a level of nuclear disarmament, it will be a world-changing event. And that matters, I'm sure, to Trump and to all of us a damn sight more than whether he wins a Nobel Peace Prize or not. Now, last night, of course, we talked about the dramatic results that took place in Italy on Sunday. Interesting bit of analysis today, that of the 18 to 30-year-olds in Italy, a whopping 44% of them voted for the Five Star Movement and 13% of them voted for the anti-mass migration Lega. And if you add up the other little parties, well over 60% of the nation's youth, the under-30s in Italy, have voted in a Eurosceptic direction. Isn't it funny that in this country, the argument we constantly get is that, it's the young that are in favour of the European Union. And we're going to debate that and look at that and think about that on my show this coming Sunday morning, where the lines for this debate will only be open to under 30-year-olds, so no cheating. And we'll encourage youngsters to phone in from Italy as well to tell us why they suddenly feel so Eurosceptic. Interesting. So, look, I will accept that Trump sometimes behaves and acts in a way that you would not necessarily expect of an American president. But he has stood up against the bully boys of North Korea, and it looks like it may yield some results. I'm pleased. John on Facebook says, well done, Trump. You had the backbone to stand up against this dictator instead of turning the Obama blind eye. John, I couldn't agree more. Chris says, Rocket Man understands he will not win the war of words with Trump, but maybe he's a bit smarter than we think. Maybe he will continue developing nukes, but be more quiet about it in the future. Well, Chris, what he can't be quiet about is launching those rockets, because they're kind of there for the world to see. But, a note of caution from Chris. Ken says, I do have to take issue with you over Trump, especially when a leader like him not acting to eradicate automatic weapons in domestic situations. Ken, it's a separate debate. We have debated the gun laws on this show, and I know that the vast majority of you wonder why some of these guns are sold over the counter in America, but it is a separate debate. Nigel, these potential talks with potential positive outcomes may happen in spite of Trump, not because of him. Well, Chris, fine. Chris tells me not to get too overexcited about this, and I accept that, Chris. I'm not going to get overexcited about it. But you know what? There's no way these potential talks are happening in spite of Trump. They're happening because of Trump. Obama and others didn't want to discuss the issue. Michael is a brand new caller to this show. He's calling from Leeds. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farage.
Hello there.
I think you've totally misread the situation.
Okay.
The North Korean leader has got what he wanted.
Yeah.
This nuclear program he's developed is extremely costly. they can't really afford it. But if they have an agreement with the South Koreans and they get rid of it, the South Koreans will get economic aid from the South Koreans. They'll probably get a promise that the South Koreans won't support an invasion of North Korea. So,
Michael, you can't possibly think the talks are going that direction that quick.
Yes, that's what North Korea is, economically inefficient.
Yeah.
He wants to do well for his people. He's not a total lunatic. And if he can get the help of the South Koreans are very good at economic development.
But Michael, if the North Koreans and South Koreans become friendly, and who knows, there might even be a Korean football team that goes to the World Cup. I mean, if the North and South Koreans become friendlier as a result of what's happened, what's not to like about that?
Well, I'm not saying there's anything to like about it, but from the North Korean leaders' point of view, the Americans can't invade then. That's one thing they fear, is the Americans invading. The only backstop they've got at present is China. But the Americans can't invade North Korea like they did off Vietnam. They've got to have a base somewhere close, like they had in South Korea during the Korean War.
Yeah. Okay, now I understand the point. I do understand the point.
That is what the North Koreans thought of thinking about.
But as long as, Michael, if they sincerely and genuinely put on hold or begin to disarm some of their potential nuclear arsenal, does that not make the world tonight a rather better place than it was this time yesterday?
Nigel, but it's not. But it also makes it safer for them about Trump's intervention.
Fine, good. Do you know what, Michael? If the world's safer for them and the world's safer for us, we're all winners.
It's nothing to do with Trump. Trump's Belarus.
Oh, right. So it's just happened by complete coincidence, yeah?
No. They put the thing there. Why the North Koreans develop militaries? They want something from the West. They usually want economic aid.
Fine.
They in the past of what they
Michael, do you know what?
Famine.
Do you know what? If we transferred some of our... In fact, we have actually been giving some of our foreign aid budget to North Korea. Goodness knows why. And the Prime Minister was called out on this about a year ago. Michael, even if we transferred some of our foreign aid budget there, if the nuclear threat goes down, that to me is good news. I thank you for your call. Trump has achieved more in his first year than some other presidents have in their entire political careers. Those who dislike Trump still won't admit that, like him or not, he is achieving great things. This is great news for all of us, says Stephen on Twitter. Ron is a brand new caller to the show from Vauxhall in South London. Good evening.
Yes, hi, Nigel.
So what do you think?
I think this is a bad move by the North Koreans. If it is indeed true, I suspect that this is being overblown. I think that North Korea should hang on to their nuclear capacity in every single way. I think they should build up as much capacity and as much nuclear weaponry as possible, and make sure that every bomb can reach the United States.
Oh wow!
If and when needed.
You're bringing us great cheer from South London tonight, Ron, aren't you? So why would you want a regime that has no democratic checks and balances on it, that appears at times to be totally out of control, that treats its own people appallingly and is a threat to world peace? Why would you want them to have a big nuclear arsenal?
Okay. Who are you describing? Are you just describing Saudi Arabia?
I was just
Bahrain.
I was just describing. No. Come back to the question. Why would you want to see? Why would you? How is the world a better place if North Korea has a big nuclear capability?
Okay, the North Koreans have got to guarantee their safety. You're dealing with the United States is the most dangerous, is the most insipid, warmongering criminal nation on this planet. It invades with impunity. It kills with impunity. It has no respect for borders, sovereignty, international law.
Ron, you've made your point very, very clear. Now, if Trump came to London, would you be one of those people out protesting, Ron?
No. The Americans have condemned themselves with this president. They're digging their own graves with his American first attitude, and the chicken's gonna come home to roost for all Americans. My point is, America is the only country that's using nuclear weapons. North Korea doesn't go around the world occupying and invading other countries and surrounding other countries with military bases. North Korea, it isn't constantly threatening America on American
They
borders.
fired, Ron, they fired, ICBMs over Japanese airspace. And given that memories of what happened in Japan in 1945 still appear to be quite strong, do you think that's an act of friendship?
Do you know why they do that, Nigel? Because the Americans have been conducting full-scale practice invasions of North Korea for the best part of for over 50 years, constantly practicing, overthrowing and decimating the North Koreans. They killed over 1 million North Koreans in the Korean War.
Well, we were there too, Ron, weren't we?
And
we were there too.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, Ron, it was a United Nations force that fought in the Korean War, wasn't it?
It was. Let's keep it real, Nigel.
What was it? Well, I've seen the medal. It's a United Nations medal.
It was 95% American, and of course us, the yap along. British,
Ron, let me ask you Ron, let me ask you. Your views on America are perfectly clear. You're not alone in thinking that. Your views are perfectly clear. I don't share them. How do you feel about the state visit tomorrow of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia?
I think it's an abomination. I think it exposes the hypocrisy of America and Britain, and the kind of despots that they will support, and the so-called renegade nations that they won't support. If those renegade leaders or those despots do what the West says, then the West invites them.
All right. No, Ron, I tell you what, mate. I tell you what, you are very, very consistent, and I thank you for coming on LBC and giving your views. And so tomorrow, we've got the Saudi Arabian Crown Prince coming to London, trying to broaden the relationship between the two countries, talking particularly about security, defence, and of course, we'll be keen to sell them as many aeroplanes as we can. He's going to have lunch with the Queen. He'll have dinner with the Prince of Wales and the Duke of Cambridge, and the UK is putting out the red carpet. Bear in mind, of course, Saudi Arabia's role in the bloody civil war in Yemen. Bear in mind that homosexuals, women, and all sorts of minorities have a pretty miserable life in a country where they use the death penalty in public executions and perform all sorts of other barbarities. I want to know, those of you that have called this show, that have protested, that have said if Donald Trump comes to this country, there'll be large-scale protests. I hope you're all out there in Whitehall tomorrow protesting about this. If not, I will think you are inconsistent hypocrites. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30. There's the possibility of talks between the North Koreans and the Americans, something that has been completely unthinkable. Is it Trump's tough diplomacy that has led to this? Is this a big foreign policy victory, albeit we haven't as yet got any guarantees about nuclear disarmament? And there'll be many that say, why would you trust North Korea? But I do think this is a step in the right direction. I'm asking whether you agree with me. Now, on Sunday, we raised a little story about the German coalition agreement between Angela Merkel and the SPD. And it was this, that written into that coalition agreement is the implementation of a financial transaction tax. That tax would be put on every single trade that takes place in financial markets, which if you're buying shares and selling them a couple of years later, doesn't really matter. But in many commodities markets, futures markets, money markets, where the same instrument is traded many times in a day, literally, you put a tax on that and you find, even though it's only 0.1%, you would literally kill liquidity. It would be the biggest disaster ever to hit the City of London. And I said, this is very dangerous, because what if, just what if, during the transition period that our Prime Minister is so keen on, they attempted to implement it and said we had to obey, because that's kind of what Barnier is saying the deal is. I said we should get out as quickly as possible. Interesting. In City AM today, Chancellor Philip Hammond said the government is seeking a good faith assurance that a shortcut process won't be adopted to fast-track legislation which would clearly be discriminatory against us. He's seeking a good faith assurance from Mr. Verhofstadt and Mr. Juncker and Mr. Barnier. Good luck with that, Philip Hammond. And if anything tells me why this transition period is a very, very bad idea, here it is. Back to Trump. Now, some people say Trump has nothing to do with has had nothing to do with them in recent months. All the meetings have been only for South Koreans and North Koreans. He isn't even involved, says Gary from Epsom. Well, Trump said today that possible progress was being made. He said it may be false hope, but the US is ready to go hard in either direction, which means, Gary, that if he trusts what Kim Jong-un is saying, if he actually believes they're going to obey the rules, as in fact defined by themselves, then I think, actually, he could have a very, very important role to play. I put it to all of you that even the prospect of talks, even that prospect, puts us in a better place than where we were yesterday. Martin is a brand new caller to the show from Hendon in North London. Good evening, Martin.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. First-time caller.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the. So, is this a diplomatic triumph for Trump, or is it just is the whole thing nonsense, Martin?
Trump ain't got nothing to do with it. To me, that North Korean man, yeah. To be honest, I'm not scared of him at all. That man just want to protect his country, so anybody invade, he can protect them. Simple as that. Like with America now, yeah. It's like what your last caller said. He was telling the truth. Everything he said, he was telling the truth. But it's like you kind of like side. It's like you said, all right, if nobody goes to the Saudi Arabia march about the Trump thing, I wouldn't go to the Saudi Arabia march, but I would go to Trump march. Because
right. So, but Martin, surely, if you wanted to protest against Trump because you don't like some of his views or you don't like the way he expresses himself, surely that is as nothing compared to the way the Saudi Arabians have treated thousands, tens of thousands of their own people.
Nigel, you are a very sensible man, Nigel. Yeah, what you just said to me is a joke, to be quite honest. Look at the difference of the countries. Look at the difference of the countries and who's done worse. Come on, Martin. Nigel, let's be real. Come on, Nigel. Nigel, right. One question I want to ask you. Yeah. One question, please.
Yeah, go on.
When was America greatest? I always hear this saying, let's make America great again.
Oh, I don't
want to know when was America ever great?
I think in the 50s and the 60s. Certainly the first time. And I think, Martin, let me finish. Hang on. Let me finish. I know you've got a lot of passion there, man, but let me finish.
Go ahead.
I think that what Reagan did by being a tough leader and standing up against the Soviets in the 1980s hastened the end of the Cold War, led directly to the Berlin Wall coming down, and, Martin, for tens of millions of people enjoying freedom and democracy.
Nigel, you know what, Nigel, yeah?
Right.
Anybody who's got a nuclear bomb, is not going to fight one another because they know the consequences. Russia and America has been in it for years. As long as I'm old, I'm like 45. As long as I can remember, they've been at it. No one with nuclear bombs is going to ever fight one another.
Provided,
Pakistan,
provided, Martin, they're rational, you're absolutely right. I think one of the fears that a lot of international commentators have got is they've genuinely questioned whether Kim Jong-un is rational. Though I know some callers to this show question whether Trump is rational, but I think he is.
Nigel, sorry, Nigel. One little tiny thing, yeah? You said the 50s and the 60s, yeah?
I think again in the 80s, yes.
Okay. America could not be great in the 50s and 60s. America was a racist country in the 50s, 60s. So it could never, ever be great.
Well, that depends how... Okay, Martin, it depends how you define great. What I'm saying is this, Martin. The big winner of World War II was America. It won in every single way. And it emerged as a much stronger country, a dominant global country but Martin, I accept internally they had massive problems then, and you know what? They've still got some now. But Martin, let me just come back to you on one point you made. You said that North Korea want to have nuclear weapons, etc., because they want to protect themselves against invasion. If that's the case, why the hell were they firing intercontinental ballistic missiles over Japanese land.
Because that's the safest way to do it.
Don't come off it, Martin. I'm not buying into that. Up until now, I've enjoyed everything you've said. But that's baloney, Martin, isn't it?
Where are they going to try the missiles? Everybody's got to test their missiles.
Martin, you are an apologist for the North Korean regime, aren't you?
Listen, where do America test their missiles, Nigel? Where do England test? They have to test them somewhere.
Yeah, but not by firing it over territory of a country that was ravaged by 2 horrendous nuclear bombs, albeit with much justification, back in 1945.
One thing about what I did hate what Trump said,
Yeah.
How he was saying, anyhow, like he was sent over a bomb, he was flattening the country, they would never see nothing like it.
Yep.
So, okay, this man's a dictator. Look how many millions of people who ain't got nothing to do with it. And this man said he's going to flatten the country. Come on, Nigel.
All right.
You can't be talking like that as a world leader.
All right, I tell you what, Martin.
Sorry.
Martin, is there anything, Martin? Is there any one single thing that Trump has done since he got elected that you approve of?
You know what?
I tell you what, Martin. I tell you what. Listen. I've given you, Martin. I've given you a very long run.
Madness. I know, because Nigel, thank you for that. I don't know.
I tell you, Martin, I'm going to do. As you're a first-time caller to this show, and as you're a great sport and a lot of fun, I'm going to let you think about that one good thing Trump may have done. And if you find it, ring me back. Martin from Hendon, new caller to the show. Great fun. Thank you very much indeed. Our government are disgusting for rolling out the red carpet for Saudi leaders. Vile, backwards nation. My grandfather, who fought in Burma, would be distraught that our government are supporting this regime. Makes me ashamed of our country. So I think, there is going to be some criticism of this visit, of the red carpet being rolled out, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, etc., having lunches and dinners with the Crown Prince. But I wonder how big the protests will be tomorrow. I don't know, 50 people? Perhaps 100, and yet, whenever we talk about Donald Trump coming to this country, the Mayor of London and others are talking about putting hundreds of thousands on the street, and I think that simply is double standards. I get from Neil, we've seen this movie before. North Korea are stalling to buy time to do what they really want to. Finesse guidance systems and final phase tech. They are experts at double dealing, and now is no exception. Trump is just the latest US president to fall for it. Neil, I tell you what, if Donald Trump places his faith in this man, and if he begins at any moment to think that trust has been betrayed, he will drop him like a stone. And at least, Neil, he's tried to confront the menace of North Korea developing nuclear weapons. The previous presidents did and said nothing at all. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in OBC. It's now 7:45. The North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, is said now to be open to having frank discussions with the United States of America. And Trump, in return, has said this is possible progress. I think this is a step in the right direction and shows that Trump's foreign policy is working. But it's for you to agree or disagree with me. Ken on Facebook says, North Korea are unpredictable. Don't be fooled. No, Ken, we've had others talking about double dealing, and I'm sure the Trump administration will not be fooled. But surely, folks, it is a step in the right direction, and it says that this man, who maybe speaks and acts on the world stage in a way you wouldn't expect American presidents to do so, but perhaps it goes to show that it's really rather effective. Grant is calling from Charlton. Good evening, Grant.
Hi, Nigel. First off, unlike your previous caller who couldn't think of any good thing Trump has done,
yes,
I'm actually huge supporter of Trump's. During the election, during the campaign and the election and everything, and I still am, and I'm a big supporter of yours, and I'm a Brexiteer. That tells you everything. But
right.
in terms of America's policy towards North Korea, I can never be in support of. America is the biggest bully the world has ever known. I'm not the American people, the American government, the American military-industrial complex is just shockingly shameful. You know, what's going on is this, it's in spite of Trump. Whether Obama was cool on Kim Jong-un or Trump is hotter, that's not the thing. Any American government that comes would always be the same in terms of the domination of the world. And look at what they're trying to do to Russia. Very soon, the MSM, the mainstream media, will convince people it makes sense to go to war with Russia. The hubris.
Well, Grant, I have to say that some of the, look, a lot of things that Russia does and the way they behave and poisoning people on our streets and all the rest of it is pretty reprehensible. But you're right. It's as if the liberal media and the established politicians have got Russia there as their enemy, because they need to have an enemy to feel good about themselves, and that's dangerous. But Grant, when you talk about America, I would agree with you that there's been a lot of American foreign policy and intervention that I've disagreed with, and I think frankly, we followed America into things that have been a mistake over the course of the last few years. And one of the things that Harold Wilson, Grant, should be remembered for is that in 1966, the American president, Lyndon Johnson, walked up Downing Street and said to Wilson, we've got a special relationship. That means you must send troops to fight in Vietnam. And Wilson said no. So we should not always follow what America does. But do you not think that at least the idea, Grant, of the two sides perhaps sitting down to talk about things and maybe even discussing a reduction of nuclear weapons, isn't that at least a good thing?
Of course it is, and I'm a full supporter of that. I'm a full supporter. It makes sense because remember they're supposed to be one people anyway, culturally, ethnically, and everything. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say to you is, when you look at, we're talking about, we can't dodge this in about American government, not America. I like to make this distinction. The American government, people are beginning to wake up. The lie is just, everyone can see it now. America is the biggest threat to world peace, American government. Everyone is seeing it now. So all the lies and all the talk about, the Iranians, the Russians, Russia. The snow last week was because of Vladimir Putin. Can you imagine? That's another one. So people need to wake up. Trump, I love Trump for one thing. Trump is not pretentious. He says America first. My people in people are losing their jobs. Steel production. I love that. This is what people in Europe should be saying too. But in terms of America being the world police, but sorry, man, that is a no.
Grant, you couldn't have put your views more clearly. Thank you very much indeed. Wesley is calling from Manchester, and a new caller to the show. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I'll just second everything Grant said then. You've had some great callers on.
Well, it's been very lively, yes. So, Wesley, is this at least potentially good news? I think it's good news, and a lot of people are very sceptical about this.
Without doubt, Nigel, it is good news. But my point is, we could have been here a generation ago. Back in '93, the Clintons signed an agreement which we subsequently broke. When they were developing a nuclear reactor for energy, the Americans said, we'll supply you with oil, did do, and then reneged on it. And here we are, 2018, and they've got nuclear bombs. We could have been here a generation ago.
Well, that may well be true. That may well be true.
That's factually true, Nigel. The Americans did cut off the oil supply, but so it's different administrations, and this is the trouble with America. Fair play to Trump, because I see him as a businessman more than anything else, and I think he sees the Cold War as just missed opportunities, to sell. And I get that, brilliant. I think there's a lot of people behind him, though, who still want America to be a unipolar leader, and that's over. As Grant said, that's over. Let's have a multipolar world, and you'll sell anything to anyone. And I think Trump's been kind of straitjacketed in a way, bounced into this aggression against Russia, etc. Because lead up to his election, he was saying, let's pull out of Syria, let's not be involved, let's trade.
Yes, I think, Wesley, one of the criticisms that I get of Trump from my American friends that backed him is they think he's been a bit too interventionist in terms of foreign policy, as opposed to what they thought he was going to do during the campaign. But Wesley, one thing he has done, he's woken the world up to the potential threat of North Korea. He's even got countries like China to put some sanctions on them. And I do think, Wesley, even what's been said today surely is some measure of success for his foreign policy.
I'll grant you that.
Wesley, thank you very much indeed for calling the show. Michael is calling from Hampton. Good evening, Michael.
Oh, good evening.
So, should we trust the North Koreans?
Well, I think it's a bit of a ploy on their part. Rather than go to the UN and beg them to lift the sanctions, they've done a very clever thing by saying, let's negotiate, let's get the South Koreans on our side so that they will help us to get Mr. Trump to lift the sanctions, because the people there are starving. I mean,
yes.
You see all the YouTube videos of the country. I feel sorry for the people there. I think this is a ploy. I don't think they spent all these years building up nuclear weapons and they're going to give them up. I think it's just a ploy, quite a clever ploy to get the sanctions lifted on their country by saying let's be friends with the South Koreans.
Michael, that is a very, very valid argument, and you may well be right. They may be doing this because they are in absolutely desperate straits. Either way, whether it's the threat of American muscle or whether it's the effect of these very punitive sanctions, at least, even if we can't quite trust their motives, at least, Michael, the thought of the North Koreans and Americans sitting around a table, surely that's at least a step in the right direction, isn't it?
And I think the man that runs North Korea will see that America isn't going to attack them if they comply and be a bit more benign to the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, Michael, let's see. We're in for some very interesting times. I think it's a good development, but you're probably right in terms of trust. Now, earlier on tonight, during this debate we've been having on Trump's foreign policy and following this announcement that the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has expressed a willingness to discuss nuclear disarmament. I've been saying since the top of the hour that I think it's a huge success. Now, a lot of you disagreed, one or two very heatedly. And I challenged Martin in Hendon, who was a brand new caller to the show. I said, and he really had a go. I said, right, OK, Martin, can you come up with one positive thing Trump has done? And this is what he said. Is there anything, Martin, is there any one single thing that Trump has done since he got elected that you approve of?
You know what?
I tell you what, Martin, listen, as you're a first-time caller to this show, and as you're a great sport and a lot of fun, I'm going to let you think about that one good thing Trump may have done, and if you find it, ring me back. Right, well, we have got Martin from Hendon back on the line. So, you've had 15 minutes, Martin, to work it out. Is there any one good thing Trump has done since he was elected?
He ain't done nothing. I can't think of anything. I can't think of nothing he's done where I can say, okay. Look, Nigel, you see the only way Trump will win a Nobel Peace Prize, yeah? The only way is if he bans all guns in America.
Well, Martin, now, Martin, you are broadening this out now. But, Martin, I tell you what, I'm going to ask you one last quick question.
Go on, mate, go on.
If the North Koreans and the Americans sit round the table and talk, isn't that at least some progress?
Yeah, it's on.
Right, there we are. No, that's it. I've actually got you to say something positive. It took me 20 minutes. We've got there. Martin, thank you very much indeed for ringing in and for being a great sport. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage